Many members of the Springfield City Council want a more diverse workforce, especially in leadership roles. Several area businesses have a chief diversity officer, someone who works to hire and retain minority employees, something many councilors here think is needed. But Mayor Domenic Sarno recently vetoed the idea, saying that the city has an equal opportunity administrator who works to do just that. City Councilor Orlando Ramos is among the councilors who disagrees and plans to push for a diversity officer. He joined me recently to explain why.
Well, in the beginning of the year, when I was reelected as council president, I spoke about the need for more diversity amongst the workforce in our municipality. And one of the things that I alluded to was the fact that at the very top of our leadership in the city of Springfield is not very diverse. The rank and file are, pretty much closer to the demographics of the city of Springfield. But when you look at the very top, it's not very diverse at all. And so I wanted to do something about it. And so I had a conversation with my colleagues. Councilor Marcus Williams came up with the idea of implementing or creating a new position called Chief Diversity Officer, who would be tasked with coming up with strategies on how to make the city more diverse, make our workforce more diverse. And that's where pretty much it came from.
No, I know that the mayor vetoed the idea outright, and I do want to say that we did invite both the mayor and Dan Hall, who's the current equal opportunity officer for the city of Springfield, to come and participate in our chat, and they declined. The door's still open, so we're hoping if they want to come in and chat, they'll take the opportunity to do so. But I'm glad you're here today to talk about the concept. So Mayor Sarno in his veto had two primary criticisms, and I'd like us to look at those. So one is that, what I just said, there is an equal opportunity administrator here in the city of Springfield. It's Mr. Hall. How is this position, proposed position, different from what Mr. Hall's already doing here in the city?
It's very different, and we spoke to Mr. Hall during our subcommittee meetings, and according to the answers that he gave us when we were asking him questions, it seems that he is in agreement that his position could be improved and can be sort of changed to give him a little bit more authority.
He's been there for 30 years, so maybe you're saying take a look at the job description.
Exactly. And so the difference is that his position currently, he reports to the Human Resource Director, and every recommendation that he makes has to go through Human Resources. A Chief Diversity Officer is a department head, so he would be charged with creating, implementing, and enforcing those ideas, those plans, those programs that he comes up with to increase diversity. And so he wouldn't have to go through the channels of Human Resources, which will give him a little bit more authority.
Gotcha. And so in the mayor's opposition, he also said that the human resources policies already include an affirmative action plan, which was revised not so long ago in 2017. What do you think about that?
Well, a chief diversity officer has nothing to do with affirmative action. We're not asking for quotas. We're not asking for the city to hire a specific amount of people of color. We're essentially asking the city to look at ways how we can look at ways that we can attract more people of color to work for the city of Springfield, but also create professional development opportunities for those who already work for the city of Springfield. Because the notion that there are no qualified employees in our city that they're not qualified to be in leadership positions.
Sort of advanced. They start out at position X, Y, or Z, but maybe want to lead a department in the future.
And everybody, wants to move up. But when they don't see people of color in those positions, they don't really have an incentive to, and they don't believe that they can, move up.
And that's something we know from research, right? Like if people see like-minded people in certain positions of power, then they think, oh, maybe I could do that too.
Mm-hmm. And we have to have a better mechanism for, to prepare people for career advancement. And I don't believe that we have that right now.
I know that during the public comment section of the city council meeting, there was a firefighter who spoke out about a concern that they had, a way that they felt that they had been discriminated against in the past. When you heard the concerns of that firefighter, was that something new to you? And have you heard from others who feel like they've been treated similarly?
I have. I've heard those concerns before. I have been contacted by people who have applied for leadership positions within their departments and were not given those opportunities, although they felt that they were very qualified for those opportunities. And so that's a concern. You know, when you hear, it's one thing to hear about, you know, the city not being able to find qualified candidates that are people of color to move into these positions. But it's another thing when you know that these are qualified people who are not given those opportunities. And so that's why there's a need for a CDO in the city of Springfield.
I know that the mayor has said that he feels like he has consistently picked candidates that he feels like are the most qualified for those jobs. Has the council, either yourself or others, said to the mayor, here's an example of a person who we think could have fit a certain role? Have you had those conversations?
We have. And one of the ones that I can point to specifically, because I said this during a public hearing, was the fire commissioner's position. Whereas the person that was selected is qualified to be a fire commissioner, there were two others who were people of color who were not selected that were on paper more qualified in terms of experience, in terms of education. And so that's a concern, you know, and the question is, how are we failing and where are we failing our employees? Where you have these two people of color who are in the ranks of the fire department, who are qualified to be commissioner of the city of Springfield, but were not selected in favor of someone who was on paper less qualified. That means that we somehow, as a city, are failing our employees.
I know that the ordinance has several bullet points that the city council, those who are in favor of this concept, would like to see. Among those is this concept that the position would develop and implement and monitor programs that promote diversity within the city workforce. Are there specific programs that you have in mind, or one that you could give it as an example that you'd like to see in place?
I don't, but I know that you know, we can do better in terms of professional development. One of the things that I've always advocated for every budget that comes through the city council. But then again, this will be something that the chief diversity officer will be tasked with exploring, looking at best practices across the country, looking at other municipalities that have this position in place, and looking at other local organizations here in the city of Springfield that have chief diversity officers. Mass Mutual has a CDO. The MGM Springfield has a CDO, Springfield College. And so, the interesting thing is that we require MGM Springfield to meet certain diversity
Their parameters. They have to hire X amount of employees from within the city of Springfield, the residency requirement.
And there's a diversity requirement as well. And so for us to require that from a private entity and a private organization, but not implement it ourselves is sort of a disconnect. And so I think that we have to lead by example when it comes to diversity.
So right now, as we've said, the mayor has vetoed this outright, and there's also, he's raised a concern about sort of the formula or the way in which the ordinance was presented. But assuming that sort of legislative matter gets resolved, I know that you've talked about bringing it back for discussion at the city council level. Taking, 2/3 vote of the city council could get this done. Sure. Any sense of when you'll bring it back?
Well, as soon as possible. By law, we were not able to take it at the last meeting because we can't discuss it until 7 days have passed. And so I intend to bring it back at the next regular meeting for a veto override.
Great. Well, City Council President Orlando Ramos, thanks for coming in.